Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and you're listening to Select Star from Data Lake. And today's episode I want to do is talk about Apache Iceberg migration. So what does it mean to migrate, or what would it look like to migrate from whatever your current table setup is on your Data Lake or Data Lakehouse to Apache Iceberg tables? And it's generally not horrendously difficult. Basically the first thing you'd kind of want to figure out is what are you going to use as your Apache Iceberg catalog? Because having an Apache Iceberg catalog is going to be what allows your tables to be portable. And that's one of the benefits of Apache Iceberg, is that I can take those tables from Spark to Dremio to Flink, just you take them between the tools that you would want to use without having to worry too much about all these different machinations and configurations. Just okay, connect to the catalog, there's my tables, let me operate on them in this standard format. Cool. Okay, so there's a couple different options. So oftentimes if you're migrating from on-prem Hadoop, you might already have sort of a Hive metastore running. Okay, you can use that Hive metastore to store your Apache Iceberg catalog. So that would be sort of the low-hanging fruit if you have a Hive metastore already. Another great option, whether on-prem or in the cloud, is Project Nessie. So Project Nessie is probably the one thing that's designed to play this specific role. Okay, this really portability of your Apache Iceberg tables. It's an open source project, so essentially you have visibility in the code, you can customize it, you can deploy your own server. But there's also a service you can use, which I'll discuss in just a moment. But bottom line is basically you can connect it to it with Spark, you can connect to it with Flink, you can connect to it with Dremio, you can connect to it with Presto, and have access to all your Iceberg tables. But what's special about it is that it captures its own level of sort of metadata. So you have your Iceberg table metadata that captures metadata for each snapshot. Okay, so that way you can do things like time travel, rollback. You can even do some branching at the table level, but it's only at the table level. With Project Nessie, you have commits that occur at the catalog level, meaning it comprises all the tables in your catalog. So that way, if you wanted to roll back because you've done a bad transaction on 20 tables and you want to undo all the work on those 20 tables, you can do that, not having to roll back each individual table, but you can roll back the entire catalog to before the transaction occurred. Okay. Also, this means you can do branching. So if you need to isolate ingestion to multiple tables, you can isolate that ingestion on a branch for all those tables for the whole catalog, and then merge those tables back in as one big, large, multi-table transaction. So you have all these different possible options when it comes to your Iceberg tables or your catalog of tables when you're using Project Nessie, which is something that only Project Nessie really offers at the moment. Okay, that catalog level abstraction. And in the future is going to collect catalog level metrics. We can be used for further optimizations. So there's a lot of really cool things about this project, about having a Project Nessie catalog. And that one, again, you can stand alone, or you could use Dremio Arctic, which is Dremio sort of like Nessie as a service. So you get that catalog self-served and maintained by Dremio, but then you also get the additional benefit where there's automatic table optimization and cleanup operations that you can automate using Dremio's Arctic service. So that way, not only do you get the catalog and all the benefits of the Nessie catalog that I just discussed, but you get these automated table maintenance procedures as well. Cool. And then just a couple other options is I'll go through one more. There's AWS Glue, and with AWS Glue, if you already are using AWS and you're already using the AWS ecosystem and AWS Glue the catalog tables already, then that becomes a decent option because you're already using it. So Hive and AWS Glue are great if Hive if you're using Hadoop on-prem, AWS Glue if you're already kind of heavy into the AWS ecosystem. But if neither of those are not true, Project Nessie becomes sort of an obvious choice for how you make your Iceberg tables portable. And there's also things like REST catalog, JDBC catalog. And again, with those, it's just it depends on whether the tools you use support those catalogs. But the idea is these are the things that are going to track your Iceberg tables so that way you can move them from tool to tool. Because the tool doesn't connect to the individual table, the tools connect to the catalog, and the catalog then tells the tool hey, these are the tables that you have. Okay, so that's the first thing you have to think about when you're migrating. It's okay, how am I going to make sure that my tables are visible to all my tools? And that's going to be based on the catalog you choose. Then it's just a matter of basically moving the tables over, and you have to ask yourself hey, do I want to rewrite all the files? Okay, which you may want to because you may want to sort the data while you're at it and repartition the data and maybe change the schema and change the way it's physically represented in the files. If you want to do that, you can just do like a CTAS. So you can use Dremio, you can use Spark. You would just basically, in Dremio, you would just have your original source as a source in Dremio. You would have your Iceberg catalog as a source in Dremio, and you can just do a CTAS, a create table as statement from one to the other. And in Spark, you would just basically, again, connect both sources. So you'd configure both sources when you configure your Spark session, and then just do a CTAS from one to the other. Okay, so that's generally pretty easy. The only downside is you're rewriting all of the data. Okay, so if you're talking about petabytes of data, that can take a while and be quite expensive. So maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to keep the data as it is. So you basically already have Parquet files with the data. They're pretty much structured the way you want them. They're good. You just kind of want to use them. Right now, your best option here is to use what's called the add files procedure. So this would require using Spark. So you would connect Spark to wherever the data is currently, and you would connect Spark to your catalog, whichever the catalogs I discussed. And then what you would do is you would use you would create an empty table with the right schema in your catalog. And then you would use the add files procedure to add all the existing Parquet files that are currently part of the table, out from the original version of the table, and then it'll write the appropriate Iceberg metadata so that way you can use those exact same files. Okay, so no files have to move, no files have to be rewritten, and your Iceberg table now can just kind of continue existing going forward, and everything is hunky-dory. Okay, now of course you don't want to just do this and just move on with life. If you actually do originally have Hive tables, so add files works great with any kind of table that you have originally, as long as the files are Parquet files. If you originally have Hive tables, it's even easier because you can use what's called the migrate procedure, which will migrate a Hive table, in your Spark session over to your Iceberg catalog. So that's also an option. And then recently, in the Iceberg codebase, they do now have like a Delta Lake table and Hoodie table migration tool, which will basically take the most recent snapshot of the Delta Lake or Hoodie table and then turn that into an Iceberg table in your catalog. How you do that or how you use that tool right now? Right now, you would just basically have to use the Java libraries. It's not really well documented yet how to use that, but it's in the code base. Okay, the Delta Lake one is definitely committed into master. The Hoodie one is currently a pull request that will be pulled in once it's completed. So you have these different mechanisms for migrating. But at the end of the day, the migration should be in phases. The idea is you want to make sure that, hey, if something goes wrong, you have the ability to go back. So the idea is that means you have to initially first have to kind of engineer your system so that when you begin the migration, that any writes to your data should be going to both. You're writing to your old table and you're writing to your new table. Then also all your reads should be going to your old table. Once you feel like everything is in sync and both tables are writing, staying in sync with each other, then you would go to the next phase where you still write to both tables, but now you're reading from the new table. And once you feel comfortable that, hey, everybody's, reading from the new table just fine, okay, and basically the data in the new table is being written just fine, then you can just start, cut off the old table, write only to the new table, read only from the new Iceberg table in your catalog, and you can retire the old table. Okay, well, you want to kind of go through those steps to make sure that, hey, at any point you can kind of go backwards to remediate. But yeah, that's essentially the gist. It's just a matter of, just coming up with a plan, coming up with the dates, the milestones. But Iceberg really does have a lot of decent tools. And again, if you're just doing a CTAS, you can use pretty much any engine that can connect to your Iceberg catalog and wherever your original data is at, and create table as statements to move your data from point A to point B. It just depends on what your needs are and the size of your data and all these kind of things. But the benefit you get is that once you have Apache Iceberg tables, you're going to get the performance benefits, the features like time travel and partition evolution. And if you're using a Project Nessie catalog, you're going to get the ability to have those catalog level commits for remediation, the branch level, the catalog level branching and tagging for like reproducibility, for ingestion isolation. And you get all those benefits. And if you're using specifically Dremio Arctic as a Nessie as a service, then you also get the automatic table optimization all in this migration. So it makes a lot of things a lot easier once you kind of move it all over. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed that. My name is Alex Merced. I'll see you all on the next episode of Select All Star from Data Lake. Have a great day.